Listen, every DM thinks that scheduling is the hardest part of being a dungeon master. It's not. The real threat happens mid-session. You've done the recap, you've had one or two encounters, and then suddenly it happens. The entire table slows down. The energy in the room grinds to a halt. No engagement, no thrill. I'm talking about energy management. Great sessions need high energy, but energy is finite. It runs out. So how do you make sure you have the right amount of energy for amazing sessions? Simple. You implement the lessons from today's episode because that's all we are talking about today. So strap in. Welcome back to How to Be a Better DM, the show for DMs who planned for political intrigue and instead got goblin juggling contests. In this show, we've talked to D&D influencers, best-selling authors, voice actors, and more, all just to figure out how to help you become the world's greatest dungeon master without spending all of your time, all of your money, or every single relationship you have. We want to shorten the learning curve and turn this art into a science and make it approachable and attainable for you. I'm your host, Justin Lewis. I'm a professional dungeon master with over 200 podcast episodes under my belt and a severe self-confidence issue that is keeping my therapist well paid. As I said, today's show is about energy management, specifically during sessions. It's a very key aspect of people management and performance. You are, in some ways, the most important person in the game because without you, the entire game doesn't function. That might make you feel kind of special, but really it just means that you actually have more on your plate. So here's the first nugget of truth that you can take to the bank. Energy is a resource. And frankly, it's a resource that most dungeon masters mismanage. And that leads to poor sessions. Today we're going to talk about how to correctly manage your energy mid-session. We'll talk about theory and practice to help you figure out how to find that sweet spot so you can deliver your sessions with high energy when it matters. All this is going to allow you to perform much better. You're going to be able to roleplay with more gusto and show rather than tell in much more active ways. Having high energy allows you to be the DM you dream of rather than the DM you regret. Throughout today's episode, you're going to learn meaningful ways to directly influence your energy during a session. You're going to be able to choose how much energy you want to put out because you'll have excess stores and you won't be just scraping by. Being energy rich is the goal. And so after today's episode, that's where we're going to get you. You're never going to have to worry about another low energy session ever again. So let's get into it. First of all, you need to know that there are two types of energy in the world of D&D. In science class, they teach you about all sorts of energy. But for dungeon masters, it's really just physical and mental. Both are important and both are finite. But just like any other resource you spend, it's gone until you do something to get it back. In this case, you can almost think of energy like mana or spell slots, or mana, if that's how you pronounce it. I've always wondered if that's the right way to pronounce it, mana or mana or mana. Honestly, I have no idea. It doesn't matter because we're talking about energy. In this case, you use energy to perform Dungeon Master magic, and once you use it, it's gone, and you got to do something to recuperate it. Remember, there's physical and mental, and they're spent separately often, but they are interconnected. In D&D, physical energy is spent mostly as you perform, right? Putting on a show, putting your effort into voices or the minis you paint, or even just standing up and kind of moving about and gesticulating kind of like I am, or bending over a battle map. That's all physical energy. For the most part, physical energy isn't really a huge problem for dungeon masters. It's the mental energy where people fall short. Mental energy is what you use when you have to improvise, when you have to adapt, when your players throw you a curveball, like saying they don't want to chase the big bad, or in my case, I wish I was the big bad. When you have to exercise patience with troublesome players, you need energy, mental energy. Dungeon mastering is way more of a brain sport than a brawn sport. And that's okay because many of the tactics we're going to talk about today are going to help you manage both. So let's start with our tactics. The first tip is the most important, so pay attention. Tactic number 1, understand yourself and how you show up. You might believe that to show up with more energy in your session, you just do things more animated and you jump up and down and move your arms about and speak louder, and that's more energy. That's thinking about this all wrong. Instead, think about who you are and what you bring to the table. As Sun Tzu says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. We know the enemy. The enemy is low energy during the session. But what do we know about ourselves? What does showing up with high energy look like for Justin, for you? In this concept is buried a secret principle of Dungeon Master energy. The energy you bring has to match your game tone and the pacing of your current scene. Said another way, you can't bring the energy of a boss fight to a shopping episode, even though I really want to see you try because it sounds super funny. That means that your players get to help dictate the type of energy that is required at any given moment. And why does this matter? Well, as you play, you constantly have to be aware of yourself and your surroundings, so that way you can keep a bead on your energy output and what's required. That often means your player's energy output. You need to pay attention to both. Paying attention to both allows you to keep an eye on sort of the intersection between the two and understand what's going on at the table. I'll give you a personal example. You all know that I yawn a lot. In fact, just talking about it makes me really... I don't want to yawn, and I hope I didn't make any of you yawn, but I'm certain I did. But anyways, a couple weeks ago, we had a podcast with London Carlisle, which was fire, by the way. He is quite a talented performer overall. And while we were on that show, I realized something about myself. You see, London is a very emotive person. He smiles brightly, and he seems very energetic, and honestly, it's quite impressive. It's sort of a challenge in and of itself. Not a challenge in the way of, oh, you're not very good, or it's something to overcome, but it's like, wow, I want to be like that. I wish I was like that. And when I was watching him, I wondered why I'm not like that, or maybe why I think I'm not like that. And I realized something, that everyone is different. Which, duh. But some people are more classically energetic. And that doesn't mean that everyone has to show up in the same way. Some people show up bringing different energy. So here's the tactic. Stop focusing on the examples of Matt Mercer, Brennan Lee Mulligan, Mark Hulmes, or anyone else that you really admire. I mean, for sure, keep those present in your mind, but don't hold them up as the only way. Instead, find out what high energy means for you. For me, that means I'm not always going to be smiling. Sometimes I'm going to be very focused because my face just naturally leans towards being focused. I don't know. But you can discover how you show up with high energy. And you will find your games to be a lot easier, and you'll be able to give more to them. This next tip is obvious, but people still forget about it. While some people can live without food for 3 weeks, you'll die in 3 days without water. I'm talking about hydration. Water is essential for a good D&D session. Simple tip, right? Nope. Because you might be thinking that to be hydrated for your entire D&D session, you just need to drink water during the session, or maybe even right before. That's only going to get you so far. See, Lindsay Baker, a senior principal scientist at the Gatorade Sports Science Institute, said, in general, it's best to sip a little throughout the day. This is because when you drink large amounts of water in a short period of time, your body finds that alarming. It actually goes into what's called a bolus response. What that means is your body's trying to protect itself from a large influx of a nutrient. So it starts secreting that nutrient in a greater proportion. You can think of it like a warehouse getting slammed with a lot of shipments. When they get a lot of shipments, they're going to try and put a lot of shipments out so that way they're not backed up. They're not going to keep any in storage. Instead, if you are trickling your shipments, your water, throughout the day, you'll be better hydrated. But how does hydration help with your energy levels? On a physical level, water is essential for carrying nutrients to your body's cells and taking away waste products. All of this can help you maintain high levels of energy. But hydration affects more than just your blood. It also affects your vocal cords. According to the UT Voice Center in San Antonio, hydration refers to keeping the vocal cords moist both externally and internally. They go on to talk about internal versus external hydration and how both are essential to proper vocal performance. You can internally hydrate with water, and you can externally hydrate with breathing steam or something like that. There's a lot of stuff you can do. And as a dungeon master, your voice is one of your most powerful tools. It is one of the tools that you will use every single session, unless you do play-by-posts, in which case, I guess you don't need to be hydrated. Regardless, your voice is a tool that most dungeon masters don't really take care of. And all you got to do is take a simple drink of water, and you should actually do that right now. That's what I'm going to do. So let's join each other in a simple drink of water. So far, we've been talking about some pretty obvious tips. But this tip, number 3, is not so obvious. It's one of the hardest things to train yourself to do correctly. Tip number 3 is shut up. Seriously, just shut up. During most sessions, there are moments when your players are talking. They might be talking to you or talking to each other. When this happens, stop talking. Conserve your energy. Enter a momentary rest mode. Allow yourself to just listen and enjoy what's going on. Respond when you need to, but don't rush to get back into DMing unless the story calls for it, either for pacing or someone asked you for something. I actually like to call these secret breaks. They're beautiful because you get the chance to take off the forever DM hat and be the audience for a while. I can't speak for everyone, but I can think of multiple times when I don't do this. And thinking about it, I don't do this because of anxiety or impatience about what happens next. I'm insecure as the dungeon master. We have this assumption that we are necessary to make the story interesting. Well, that's partly true. If you look for these secret breaks and then enjoy them, you'll learn that you actually don't have to be the one to make the story interesting. Instead, you're just one component. And the other players at your table also make up the interesting factor of the game. And that's D&D. But let's think about the opposite of this. Imagine for a second, instead of being calm and waiting for people to finish their thought, you just rush in and interrupt or say something before the moment has fully developed. If you're like me, you're actually not imagining this scenario, you're remembering because it's happened to you. You're remembering a time when you interrupted your players, or you were too hectic or impatient, whatever it is. In those moments, I guarantee you, looking back, you'll note how the game became choppy. To get good at this, you need to start being comfortable with silence. You need to be secure in the fact that you know what you're doing, and you know why you're waiting for someone to fill the silence. I know it's not a common thing to do nowadays. Silence isn't something a lot of people talk about. But in your next game, allow silence to be a player at the table. If given the permission, silence will contribute just as much as everyone else to the flow of the game. And in this case, it's actually going to help you have more energy for when you need it. Okay, up to this point, we've been talking about knowing yourself, hydrating yourself, and shutting yourself up. So next, let's talk about a simple tip that actually comes from the world of athletics. This tip is probably going to make you think that I'm crazy, but I'm telling you this works. Number 4 is take a pre-session warm-up. A couple weeks ago, I was getting ready for one of my paid D&D games. I had about an hour before the game started, and I just finished my day job. My wife, who had my son at the time, needed a break, so I decided to take my son for a walk. I pushed him in his stroller all around our neighborhood, up and down hills, looking at the houses nearby and some of the excavators and diggers at the construction sites. As we came back to the house and I went into the session, I was ready. I was physically ready. I mean, my blood was moving, my lungs were warmed up and primed, and my energy was at this sweet spot. See, if you remember, there's two types of energy. There's physical and there's mental. But here's a secret. They are deeply connected. If your body feels good, your mind's going to feel good, and vice versa. So here's the takeaway. Before your next session, do a brisk warm-up exercise. Do some jumping jacks, some burpees, arm rotations, go on a walk. It doesn't matter. Get your body moving, and your mind will start moving. Tip number 5 is something I wish someone had told me when I first started D&D. Skip the boring stuff. If you are in a lull during a session, then just skip ahead to when something happens. You, the Dungeon Master, are the curator of the game. You get to choose what happens and what is just a cutscene. So if your group is stuck doing something boring and everyone feels it, just cut the scene. Move on. Most of the time, our energy mirrors our enthusiasm. When we're excited about something, we have high energy. If we aren't excited about something, we have low energy. I hate to say it, but if you have lots of moments of low energy at your table, you might be the culprit. You might be at fault because you could just skip the boring stuff. You planned something that you didn't want to, and you're just not listening to what you're telling yourself. So take a moment, listen to what you're telling yourself, admit that, hey, this is boring, and move on. It's not that big of a deal. When I started my first campaign, I had the Critical Role dream. I imagined this long-term campaign with a bunch of friends lasting years and years, and everyone was just so happy and la 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 la. Unfortunately, it took me 3 years to learn that that's not actually the dream. The length of your campaign doesn't matter. The memories matter. Nobody will remember the boring bits. So skip to the juicy bits and everyone will thank you. But what if I don't have any juicy bits? First of all, that's gross. Second of all, take a mid-session break. That's a bonus tip you'll hear on our Patreon. But take 5 minutes. Do number 4, a little warm-up. Drink some water, tip number 2. And then go back in with very strong body posture, another bonus Patreon tip. And then make some interesting crap up, okay? Take a moment, skip the boring stuff, and get to the good stuff, right? You don't want to pay your time for something that you'll regret, because time is a finite resource. No one gets any more of it, and your players are the same. Seriously, if you didn't prep enough, that shouldn't be a cause to make your players do boring stuff. So skip it. The last tip I'm going to give you today is one that you should honestly keep in your back pocket anytime you're working on something new. It's practice. Being high energy is just like everything else in life. You can develop it and you can refine it and you can practice it. Doing it over and over again, though, isn't enough. You have to consciously analyze your efforts and do it deliberately, improve deliberately. You have to consciously analyze your efforts and work on improving deliberately every time. It's the difference between repetition and targeted repetition. Luckily, you can practice using more than just D&D sessions. Whenever you have conversations with strangers or friends, pay attention to your energy and how you show up. If you have to give a speech, review your energy management. Anytime you could give what might be seen as a performance, you need to be deliberate. As you do this over and over, you will learn how you show up. You'll learn how you put energy into your voice. You'll learn when you pull back on your energy and when you put out. And to help you, here's an exercise that you can do with every single one of your D&D sessions to start learning about yourself and practicing. It's called the perfect recap. Most D&D sessions start with a recap of what happened last session. And a lot of recaps are pre-written. Sometimes DMs sort of do it on the fly. But all of this makes the recap the perfect candidate for high energy practice. If it's pre-written, you know exactly what you're going to say. Each session, you can give as much as you can to the delivery and performance of your recap. Maybe you might add some cinematic music or use some role-playing voices, pauses, voice modulation. Anything and everything you can do to make this as high energy as possible will reap dividends because you will start to learn some important things. And this will do some important things for you. First of all, it's going to set a very strong tone for the game. Each game is going to start like a movie, setting up everything else to be epic. Next, it's going to show you what high energy feels like. You need to know the sensation so that way you can replicate it. Lastly, the recaps are often at the start of the session, right before the DM says, "What would you like to do?" Which is a great place to take a secret break. Ask the question, "What would you like to do?" And then fold your hands and sit back and shut up. Listen to your players and enjoy the moment as they figure out what to do next. After doing this exercise a few times, you can probably move on to adding some more high energy moments during each session. And then little by little, you can expand that until your entire sessions are just all high energy. However that looks for you. But this is a very great exercise in figuring out what high energy looks like, practicing it, and knowing how to iterate on what works. Energy management can be extremely simple. Unfortunately, we often overlook it because it is so simple. So here's a challenge for you. Try one of these 6 tips to implement over the next few sessions of your D&D game. And then stop. Message me and let me know what sort of difference you saw. Because I guarantee it, you'll see a major difference in using these tips and not. But either way, I'd love to hear your experience. Like I said, I guarantee you'll see how much of a difference energy management can make in facilitating greater roleplay and overall a better gaming experience. Thanks so much for joining us on today's show. We really appreciate you being here and listening and partaking of our content. We really couldn't do this without you. We also want to give a special thanks to our graphic designer, Benj Wayland. He's been working on some of our published one-shots and also on our new logo and some other graphic and branding design elements. We're super excited to unveil those for you coming soon, but until then, you're just going to have to wait just like the rest of us. Next, a big thank you to our moderators, Tech Senpai, TJ Maxx, and Juka. We are super grateful for you guys, and honestly, you take so much off our plates that it allows us to do what we're trying to do. And lastly, we just want to give a big thank you to our patrons, Foxy Beard, Kyle Wilson, Nick Amon, and Professor Nobody. Honestly, you guys are amazing, and we just want to do as much as we can for you. So anytime you think of an idea of what else we can do for you, you just let us know. Your trust and faith in us push us to be better and make ever better content, and for that, we're just so grateful. The rest of this month, we're going to be talking about performance and showmanship, so make sure to come back for the next episode, which will be handcrafted just for you. But until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative.